name is Symphony Daly, and I will be presenting Henry's Freedom Box. I'm 9 years old. Have you ever heard the story Henry's Freedom Box? Well, in the mid-1800s, there were about 4 million slaves living in the United States. Slaves were owned like tables or cows or wagons. Historians believe between 60,000 and 100,000 slaves escaped to freedom, traveling on what was called the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad wasn't a real railroad. It was all the secret ways slaves made their way from the south to the north. They hid in carts, rode on horseback, walked hundreds of miles through forests and swamps, and crossed flowing rivers in the summer and icebound rivers in the winter. Conductors and station masters hid them and helped them throughout their journey. When Henry Brown climbed into his freedom box, he'd hoped he'd be carried to a safe world. He brought along a small tool to make air holes, a little water, and a few biscuits. Henry arrived in Philadelphia, having traveled 350 miles from Richmond, Virginia, in 27 hours. His story made headlines in America and Europe. Also, I will be reading a few pages from the story Henry's Freedom Box. I will start when Henry's friend James comes into the factory to tell him that his wife and children were just sold at the slave market. His friend James came into the factory. He whispered to Henry, "Your wife and children were just sold at the slave market." "No!" cried Henry. Henry couldn't move. He couldn't think. He couldn't work. "Twist the tobacco," the boss poked Henry. Henry twisted the tobacco leaves. His heart twisted in his chest. At lunchtime, Henry rushed to the center of the town. A large group of slaves were tied together. The owner shouted at them. Henry looked for his family. "Father, father!" Henry watched his children disappear down the road. Where was Nancy? He saw her at the same moment she saw him. When he wiped away his tears, Nancy too was gone. Henry no longer sang. He couldn't hum. He went to work, and at night he ate supper and went to bed. Henry tried to think of all happy times, but all he could see were the carts carrying away everyone he loved. He knew he would never see his family again. Many weeks passed. One morning, Henry heard singing. A little bird flew out of a tree into the open sky, and Henry thought about being free. But how? As he lifted the crate, he knew the answer. He asked James and Dr. Smith to help him. Dr. Smith was a white man who thought slavery was wrong. They met the next morning at an empty warehouse. Henry arrived with a box. "I will mail my slave to a place where there are no slaves. Thank you for listening to my presentation."